Going to be doing the front brakes and the rear brakes on a 2012 Ford Escape. See it here. This is my wife's daily driver. I've already taken all four wheels off and I've got it up on blocks. My driveway has a slight angle to it, but I've got the truck level and I've done the shake test to make sure that everything's sturdy. I've got the front on blocks, I've got the back on jack stands, but everything is sturdy and stable. And we're gonna go ahead and do all four brakes. I've got these brakes from rockauto.com. I'm not sponsored by them, but I'm not necessarily endorsing them either. That's just where I've found is the cheapest parts online that I can find. Going with Bendix on the rear. These are the premium copper-free brake shoes, ceramic, and then here's for the front. We're going with Wagner's. These are just the two that I chose. And I've got all the brake shoes for the back. See them here with all new hardware. And then the brake shoes for the front. All four pads with the new clips. And I only paid $70 for both of these, for the pads and for the shoes. So $70, and I'm pretty sure that included shipping as well. So, nope, I'm sorry, it was $80 with shipping. But not bad overall for $80 for all four tires worth of brakes. So let's go ahead and get started. Make sure before you start compressing your calipers that you take the cap off of the brake fluid reservoir. It's going to be right here behind your battery in your air filter box. And just take the cap off and set it somewhere where it's not going to fall. But remember to put it back on when you're done. So we're all set to go ahead and start replacing the front pads. I'm on the driver's side right now. For those of you not familiar with basic terminology as far as it refers to brakes, this is your brake rotor. This is your brake caliper. Okay. And basically what happens is the caliper, when the brake pedal is applied, the master cylinder forces hydraulic fluid down this brake line here. And it basically compresses the piston inside here. There's a piston inside the caliper, and that squeezes both of the pads together, so it's basically squeezing on this rotor to stop the car. Okay, so you've got your pads, and they're right in there. These ones actually are not worn completely down. I'm going to go ahead and replace them now, but I could probably get another 10,000-15,000 miles out of these if I wanted to. But again, this is the caliper, so we're going to be taking that off, and then we're going to be replacing the pads. You've got to take this clip off too, but I'll show you that when we get there. It's kind of like a spring clip. Okay, but what we're going to be doing first is we're going to be removing this bolt here. You can see it there, and then there's a bolt underneath. Hopefully you can see it down there, right there. So first we've got to take these caps off. If you've got a good thumbnail, you can just pop that cap off. That's just to keep dirt and debris out of there. And the bolt head is right inside there. We'll take the bottom cap off as well. Okay. And then you're going to need a 7mm Allen wrench. Okay, this is an Allen wrench, and we're going to insert it long ways this way. I'm sorry, we're going to insert the short side first for leverage, and we're going to loosen those two up. Now, these are pretty tight, so what I do is if I need additional leverage just to break them free, I'll take a box end wrench and I'll put it on my Allen for some additional leverage, and then I'll use that. Oh, see, that sucker was really tight. I'll use that to pop it loose, and then I can turn the wrench around and I can get the rest of it out by hand. So I'm going to pop the bottom one loose and then take both of the bolts out. Alright, so once you have the screw turned loose, the bolt, you can see it loose there. It doesn't come all the way out, you just need it enough to clear that hole right there so the whole caliper can slide off. So again, the bolt's not going to come all the way out. It's kind of in a rubber boot, so it feels like it's kind of stuck in there, so it's not going to go anywhere. Just leave it in there. It just needs to be back for enough to clear that back bracket. So before we take the caliper off, we're going to have to remove this spring clip here. So you've got these two little fingers here, and I'm just going to use this pry bar, and I'm going to pop it over the top of here. Oh, okay. Well, that was quick and easy. So the whole thing just pops right off, right? And we have replacement ones, but I usually set these to the side just in case there's anything wrong with the replacements. So I won't go ahead and toss this yet. Right, now the whole caliper assembly should just pop right off. There we go. The front pad will stay in place and the back pad will just be stuck there. And then we'll just set that up on top of the caliper. If you want to be extra safe to make sure this doesn't fall while you're working and break that brake line, you can use a bungee cord or something and just hang it up to the top shock or something like that. It's pretty secure here. So I'm going to go ahead now and compress the cylinder. So you'll see here, there's quite a bit of brake dust there, and there's a nice little bug in there. Nice. So this is the hydraulic cylinder head here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the old brake pad on. So I'm going to clip that back in, and I'm going to use a C-clamp, and I'm going to compress it because the new pads are much thicker. So this cylinder needs to be fully compressed before we can put the new pads in. So let me set that up and I'll show you. I've got my 6-inch C-clamp set up here. You're going to need at least a 6-inch to get clearance. I tried a 4-inch and that was too small. There are little compression tools that you can buy at auto parts stores. If you already have a C-clamp though, this is not a complicated thing. Go ahead and use your C-clamp. But if you go ahead and buy the specialty tool, it's about the same price as buying a C-clamp anyway. Alright, hopefully you guys can see this. So I've got the C-clamp on there. You want to make sure it's centered, and then you're just going to start screwing it down. And this should go really easy. So if it starts getting harder, that means that you're probably starting to seize the piston a little bit. So if it starts getting harder, stop screwing it down, loosen it up, and recenter the clamp. Make sure the clamp is centered at all times because you want to apply even pressure across that piston. But you're basically going to compress it until it doesn't go anymore. I'll show you what it looks like when it's fully compressed. And again, if you don't fully compress it, you're not going to be able to get the caliper back on. So now, okay. So now it's fully compressed. I can take my C-clamp off of there. And you can see now that I took the old pad out of the way that the piston is fully down. Okay. So I'm going to clean this up a little bit and then we're going to put the new pad on. Alright, so I've got it all cleaned up. I've just used a wire brush to kind of get all the loose junk out of there. A little bit of rust and some brake pad stuff and a little bit of grease. Some people really go crazy with brake parts cleaner and all that to get it spick and span. I'm not going to bother. This is just a work truck. But do whatever level of cleaning you feel is best. Okay. So with the new pads, I've got my new pads here. This one just clips in. Kind of clips inside the piston there. Like that. And then this one here, you'll just take the old pad off. And the new pad just sets right in there. Okay. You can kind of see the thickness difference. There's the new pad and there's the old pad. So I'd say the old pad was probably about 50% worn. All right. So let me. All right. So to put the caliper back on, we're just going to slide it right over the top, like so. And you're going to have to push your bolts back far enough to have enough clearance. Okay, that just slides right in place. And then you're going to start threading those bolts back in. Install the new tensioner clip. Got this brand new shiny one here. And this is going to go on like this. Best thing to do is kind of put it from the top to the bottom. So you're going to put the top one in, you're going to put the bottom one in, and then this last one here, you're going to have to kind of get your pry bar in there and kind of stretch it over there and kind of push it in with your tool. It's a little bit tricky, but I have faith in you, you'll figure it out. Once it clips in, you're good to go. And you'll feel it clip in. there you go, we're done. I've got the bolts tightened back down. If you are using a torque wrench for any reason, you can look up the torque specs in the owner's manual. Should be in the maintenance section. I don't use the torque wrench really. I just use my calibrated elbow and use my best judgment. But I just put the dust cap back on, put that bottom one on, and I'm done. So it really is that easy. The new pads are in. I'm gonna go do the other side, and then we're gonna move on to the back. On the rear brakes, these are called drum style brakes because you've got, instead of having a rotor here that the caliper squeezes to stop, you actually have this drum shape here that covers up the brake pads, and the brake pads kind of force in from the inside. So once we get this cover off, I'm sorry, this drum, which is kind of a cover, I'll show you the insides and what it looks like. But for now, we have to take these two safety clips off. If you look close, they're kind of tough. It looks like they screw off, but they really don't. You can sit here and spin these all day. They're not going to screw off the end of the stud. So I'll show you how I take them off. They're pretty cheap. If you want to buy replacement ones at the parts store, I'll show you the method that I use. I just get a screwdriver and get them pried away from the drum. You're going to damage them using this method, but you can just replace them with new ones or completely leave them off. It's your call. But I just get them loose enough to where I can get a pair of pliers behind them, and I just kind of twist them right off. They break, right? In this case, I'm not even going to bother replacing them. I think they're totally unnecessary, but if you were a very safety cautious person or whatever, go ahead and get some new ones from your parts store and replace them. Or I've never seen someone take them off to where they're completely undamaged. So if you do plan on putting them back on, you're probably going to have to buy new ones. Anyway, enough said about that. Got those two safety clips off, and the next part, you're going to go find your favorite hammer. Any hammer will work. This is a claw hammer. Some people might say you need a sledgehammer or ball peen hammer or whatever. Any hammer works. You're not going to hurt anything here. What you're going to want to do is you have to kind of compress the shoes inside to get this to come off. It's not just going to slide off. So what I do is I just start giving it a good solid whack on the top, and I'll rotate it while I'm... Once you do that enough, it's going to feel like it's loose, and you can just slide it right off. Careful breathing in all that dust powder that's in there, brake dust. So that's the drum. You can see inside it looks very similar to the surface of a rotor, and that's what the pads rub on. So inspect that, make sure it's nice and smooth and there's no pitting. Usually if it's like heavy pitting, like little pock marks, that may need replaced at that point. Sometimes you can have a machine shop turn these, but they're cheap enough to where you just replace them if they're bad. But as long as they're nice and smooth, there's quite a bit of thickness there, and there's no pitting, you should be good. Okay. So this is the inside of our brakes here. These are your shoes. It's the same thing as pads. They just call them shoes on rear brakes. And basically those will press out like that. So this is your brake cylinder here. And when you apply the pressure from the brake pedal will push hydraulic fluid down here, and this has two pistons. In this case it pushes out both sides, and that will push the shoes outwards, and they'll apply pressure to the inside of that drum, and that's what slows you down. Okay, so a few different things here. This is quite a bit more complicated than the front brakes. You've got your brake cylinder here, you've got an adjustment lever here, and this will have to be adjusted once you put your new pads on. You've got a retaining clip here that holds the two pads together like this, and then you've also got retention clips here and here. Those are the first two that you'll take out. And to do that, you can use a pair of needle nose pliers or regular pair of pliers, and you'll just kind of compress the spring, and then you'll turn it 90 degrees, and it'll pop right out of that slot. See that there? Make sure you keep all those parts. So there's the spring, and then there's that retaining clip. You can see that it's got the little notch like a plus sign. So when you put it back on, you put it on and you rotate it 90 degrees. And again, you can use a regular pair of pliers for that. In this case, even though there's quite a bit of brake dust here, I still have plenty of thickness on these pads. So I've already decided I am not going to replace these pads right now. I'm going to wait a few more miles before I do that. But I just wanted to go ahead and show you guys the procedure. So you're going to take both of those clips off. You're going to take this tensioner clip off. And again, just a pair of pliers. You're going to pull it and take it off. And then you'll just replace both of the pads and you'll put it all back together. Be sure you only do one side of the car at a time, because if you forget where any of these parts go while you're doing it, you can always go look at the other side. Whereas if you just took it all apart first and then went from there, you might forget where things go. So again, I'm not going to replace these pads today, but I just wanted to get it apart and show you that it is possible. And yes, the back brakes look a little bit intimidating, but it's really not all that bad. If you're at this point and you've already done the front brakes, you got it. You can do the back as well. Couple different technologies between the two, but again, you're already at this point, so might as well go ahead. That's all I got for now. Thanks.